as the bewilderment that has engulfed Kenyans following the starvation to death of 4 cult members in Malindi, Kilifi County persists. More families and those lucky to survive are now coming forward to narrate their ordeal. The families accuse Pastor Paul Mackenzie of Good News International Church of initiating their children to Satanism. Benson Omari from Witoti village in Mumias East constituency, a father of 5, is still in mourning, having buried one of his sons, Ian Mukumbu, some 2 weeks ago after he refused to eat and rejected education. The Form 2 student was introduced to Pastor Mackenzie's fellowship in 2019 by his elder brother Felix Mutimba when he was in Standard 8. Last month, teachers called me that my son had started acting and behaving strangely. He refused to eat and termed education as useless. The starvation made his health deteriorate until his death, and he was buried 2 weeks ago, said Omari. Omari adds that Mutimba, who was a first-year Bachelor of Finance student at Kababi University, was introduced to Mackenzie in 2019 by one of his agents, who also happened to be a student at the university. He took him and 10 other students to Malindi in the guise of a university tour. Refused education. He says, according to Mutimba, they ate and drank and immediately got converted and started opposing education and hard work. My son was introduced to the cult-like church where he became one of the agents and started recruiting other students. He later declined studies and traveled to Malindi and came back. When he came back, he managed to brainwash his 4 brothers who also went to Malindi, and when they returned, they started being radical and were against learning and eating, said Omari.
Omari says his elder son was instructed to vie for the student leader post, and that he will get funding for his campaigns from the church. He was then later told to convert his brothers into the sect for him to prosper. Mackenzie on Monday was arraigned in court after he surrendered himself to police following the death of his 4 followers. The 4 died of starvation, alleging that it will save them from the pain and suffering of the world. Elsewhere in Lurambi constituency, parents of 3 children who traveled to Shakahola village in Magarini constituency are yet to come to terms with how some of their well-educated children were convinced to travel all the way to Kilifi and be subjected to starvation under the guise that they will get saved from the pain and suffering of the world. The Nairobian also found Tabitha Mukulu sitting pensively outside her muddy house in Ebukandi village in the same constituency. Mukulu, a widow, does not yet know the whereabouts of one of her sons who also traveled to the Malindi church. 2 were rescued alive by police but in critical condition and are still in custody. Mukulu says on April 1, 2023, she left to look for food and left her 2 sons at home, James Luseka and Kevin Musalakani. But upon returning, she found the 2 missing. She was informed by a family member that her sons had left to attend prayers in Nairobi led by their elder brother, Ferdinand Muhanji, but under the direction of someone, and that they would come back home. The mother of 5 says she tried to call her 3 sons, but their phones were not going through apart from the older sons, which was on and off until they were found unconscious. I was shocked, and I am still devastated that my sons whom I left at home found themselves in Malindi, she says. The 55-year-old widow says she had invested her hopes in her son, especially the older one, Ferdinand Muhanji, 32, who had just secured a job at a local secondary school after graduating with a Bachelor of Education, Arts degree in Geography and Kiswahili from Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology in 2016. Muhanji left with his wife, whose whereabouts are still unknown. Also missing is their 2-year-old niece with whom they lived. Muhanji was among those.
Prosecutors plan to file. Mackenzie stands accused of terrorism, murder, kidnapping, cruelty towards children, among other crimes in court documents seen by AFP. Former taxi driver turned himself in on April 14th after police acting on a tip-off first entered Shakahola, where more than 100 mass graves have now been found. Mackenzie used to pass radicalized messages through television station to followers. The horrific saga has seen President William Ruto vow to intervene in Kenya's homegrown religious movements and thrown a spotlight on failed efforts to regulate unscrupulous churches and cults that have dabbled in criminality.